So I'm John Hollway. I'm a graduate of the MAPP program. I graduated in 2018. It is my pleasure to be talking to you this evening about relationships while sheltering in place, or borrowing from Gabriel Garcia Marquez, love in the time of coronavirus. This is, as you might have noticed already, my first time doing a Zoom webinar. I've done enough Zoom meetings that I really should have figured out the sound, but what's different about a webinar from a meeting is that you can see me, but I can't see you. So I'm going to be reliant on you to put questions into the chat or the question and answer section. And I will do my best to keep up with them. We've got a fair amount of material that I would hope to cover and not a lot of time, so I'm going to move fairly quickly but leave time for Q&A at the end. It seems appropriate in a conversation about relationships while sheltering in place that my wife, Jamie, will be the equivalent of my Vanna White. She's vastly overqualified for the task, but is being wonderfully supportive, and so she will be helping to field the questions and may cut in from time to time, but we will try to get to all of your questions at the end if we don't get to them through the process. So let's go right on into it. And let's start by reminding ourselves about what well-being really is. So I think one of the things, I work at Penn Law in my day life, and I work a lot with law students and college students and lawyers and other professionals to talk to them about well-being. And lawyers tend to be pretty rule-driven and pretty perfectionist. And so one of the things that lawyers kind of think about is they're either well or unwell. And I want to start by debunking that as a notion. Well-being, the way we're going to use the phrase today, is a subjective state of mind. It's a dynamic state of mind, and it's about finding and intentionally shaping your life in a way that the balance of the different phases of your life work for you. That's not something that is the same every day, right? There are going to be days, in fact, if you were to survey people, and if I were to ask you on a scale of 0 to 10, how are you doing, right? Most people in most times, this not being most times, would say, I'm probably a 6 or a 7. And what that generally means is most of the things in my life that are big, I would check off in the plus column, but there are a few things in my life that I really wish were doing better, and there's a lot of room for growth. So most of us would be, 5 to a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. Most lawyers think of well-being and they're either well or unwell. It's a binary, 0 or 1. But the scale I'd like you to think about is actually a broader scale, a scale from -10 to 10. Now, if most of us are a 5 to a 7 on our scale of 1 to 10, that would equate to somewhere in the 1 to 2 frame on -10 to 10. So 0, I would say, is normal, right? And if you're in the positives, that's good. More things in your life are good than bad. And what we're trying to do with well-being is we're trying to move ourselves to the right on that scale. A -10, that means you're in crisis mode. And to be really honest, I think there are probably a lot of people in crisis mode right now. Positive psychology is probably not what you need at that point. You need a real professional, clinical psychology at that point if you're in the -7 to -10. Hopefully, that happens very rarely in our lives. But it's equally true that it's rare that our lives are firing away on all cylinders, that that everything is awesome, right? That's probably equally rare. My wife and I have a joke that we tell where we say, man, everything in my life is going great, and then we laugh and say, that was a pretty good 45 seconds. So, hopefully we avoid that crisis mode, but we probably also aren't always in that mode where everything is awesome. And the whole point of well-being is to try to stay out of that crisis mode where we have that locked-in mindset and we're incapable of figuring out our way out, and instead working ourselves to the right on our timeline as far as we can go. And the reason that we do that is A, we're making our lives better when we do, but B, when we get the inevitable curveballs that life is going to throw on us, and I got to tell you, we're all living in the middle of one, right? The farther we are on that positive, the easier it is for us to adapt and adjust to a curveball like coronavirus, and the sooner we can figure out how to modify our lives and improve our lives to come back from it after we get that curveball. So when we think about well-being, we're thinking about something that is subjective and dynamic, can change on a dime, as this coronavirus thing has shown us, and where we're on that spectrum, always trying to design our lives in ways that bring it into a greater balance and prioritize the things that are important to us and help us move forward. So right now, we're all living in this sheltering in place thing. And to be fair, I think we're all seeing stories and living experiences of both the blessings and the challenges of that. Speaking for myself, my wife and I were getting used to being empty nesters, learning how to kind of live by ourselves. Now all of a sudden there's 7 people in our house. Sometimes that's great. We can have little dance parties like what's going on here on the left, or watch our children play in the yard and do things together that we otherwise wouldn't get to see. But you know what? We're all cooped up. We're not moving around the way we want. There's friction, there's challenges. And so there's no question that while we can try to find the good things about sheltering in place, we're also present and in front of each other at times when we used to have releases or other activities that we could pursue that would make things easier for us. So as with most things, sheltering in place has its positive qualities, but also its challenges. But here's where we don't want to be when we're sheltering in place. So this is what's called the 4 horsemen of the marital apocalypse. And this is actually taken by the Gottman Institute, an institute in Washington that specializes in marital counseling and marital training. They have this kind of weird dark magic skill that they have where they can take a marital couple, watch them for 45 minutes or so, and they have like a 90% prediction on whether that couple will be divorced within 24 months. It's kind of eerie, but what they've identified is that the way that marital couples communicate actually it reveals elements about their relationships. And so the 4 horsemen of the marital apocalypse, where we don't want to be when we're sheltering in place, is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and above all, contempt. Okay? If those things are happening to us with people that we're ostensibly very close to, and certainly people that we're stuck in a house or an apartment with, that's a sign that it may be time for us to take a step back, reassess, and look for strategies that can make the time that we're spending together more meaningful, look for ways that we can, excuse me, that we can support each other. And so we're trying to, what we'll be talking about today are some strategies, hopefully very easy to implement and kind of fun strategies that we can deploy to defend against the descent of our relationship into the 4 horsemen of the marital apocalypse. The antidote, what the Gottman Institute would say, and what my colleagues James Pawelski and his wife, who've written a book about the positive psychology of relationships, would say, is that strong relationships benefit from mutual recognition and regard. People who feel that their partner recognizes and appreciates their strengths report a higher satisfaction with the relationship, a greater amount of their commitment to the relationship, and report that their basic needs in the relationship are met. So again, they're in that, 5 to 7 on a scale of 10. Are there things about the relationship that I might change? Yes, but when I think about the roots of this relationship, those roots are strong because my partner recognizes me and appreciates those parts about me that make me uniquely me. And it's that recognition and that regard that make the difference when you're in tough times and when you're, struggling to figure out what your new normal is, as we're all doing right now. How do we get this recognition and regard? Well, one way that we do it is we work on a concept called high quality connections. High quality connections are connections that benefit from vitality. So there's an energy that we get from and put into the relationship. Positive regard, we think highly of the person that we have this relationship with. And mutuality, we know that they feel the same way about us. That recognition and that regard. So this is a picture, the young man on the left, this is probably taken, 12 years or so ago. The young man on the left is unrecognizable now, but that's my son Peyton. And the gentleman on his right, on your right, his left, is his buddy Danny. And this is after a soccer game. And I love this picture because it really conveys that vitality and positive regard. I mean, they're sharing a Danish. They've got their arms around one another, not a care in the world. They're loving each other, and that mutuality and that positive regard, that's the feeling we want. And I think we all know this feeling. It's the feeling you get if you're at the office or you're walking down the street and you see somebody that you know and you light up. And you're like, oh my God, it's you. Hey, how are you? We all love that feeling, and that feeling of not only do I like this person, but I know this person likes me. That's what we're after in a high quality connection. And what the science of high quality connections tells us is that it's actually not that difficult to build these high quality connections. What it requires is a few seconds of careful intention. But if we spend the couple extra seconds that it takes, we can actually generate those high quality connections. When we have those high quality connections, what we see is a lot of positive things happen to us, not just emotionally, but physically. So one of the things that happens is we feel safe and we feel relaxed. And when we feel safe and relaxed, our cognitive capacity increases. Stress is actually a reaction that generates hormones in our body that makes us focus on the threat that we perceive, and that takes our attention away from all of the other things going on around us. When the reverse happens, we get the same reverse result. When we're less stressed, we perceive more. So less stress, more cognitive ability, and that actually means more brain power to solve whatever the problems are in our environment. But also, when we're less stressed, we have increased cardiovascular ability, increased neurological ability, our immune systems are stronger. In a time of coronavirus, you really want to be relaxed if you can, because your immune system is actually stronger from the positive emotions that you're generating from your relationships. And last but not least, not surprisingly, because we know we've got people around us that care about us, we've got increased resilience. That's a whole new network and social systems and things that we can rely on to help us get through tough times. So the benefits of high quality connections that have been shown in scientific testing are all three of these. Our brains are more powerful, our bodies are more powerful, and we're more resilient. So it's clearly something that we want to get after. Now, a webinar makes this hard to do. When I'm teaching this to students or to businesses, what I would do is I would say, okay, everybody now go find somebody that you don't know very well and make a high quality in 1 minute, go. I can't do that here, unfortunately, but it's okay because I already know what would happen. What you would do in that situation is you would approach the other person and you would volunteer something about yourself, or you would ask something about the other person. Hi, I'm John. What's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here? The two of you would do that in a mutual fashion. You would find some topic that you could bond over. Maybe it's that you both love dogs. Maybe it's that you're both from New York. Whatever it would be, you would find that connection and you would talk about that. And after a minute, I would call you back in and I would say, so tell me what you learned. What were your learnings from the 1 minute challenge? And because you've done this and you've introduced yourself and you know what this is about, and I've done this with thousands of people at this point, and the same learnings come back. First of all, those first moments matter. The moments where we reach out and initiate contact with somebody. Just the fact that we are reaching out is a gesture of respect and regard. So by reaching out to somebody and engaging with them, we are showing them that we feel that they are worth our time. So again, what helps relationships? Recognition and regard. By just initiating the contact, we've started that process. What's next? Well, curiosity. Why? Because curiosity is me, again, investing time and interest in you. I'm reaching out to you and I'm saying, I want to know more about you. I want you to explain yourself to me. That's a gesture of recognition and regard, useful for building a high quality connection. Common ground can be found quickly. People will respond to you and you will work through topics and find ways that you connect. Everybody does that in mere seconds. It can be done certainly with somebody you already know, as long as you're willing to keep focusing on it. Lastly, and this is particularly hard to do over Zoom, nonverbal communication speaks volumes. When I talk to people about what's useful in these 1 minute high quality connections, it's they're looking in my eyes, their body language is open, they're facing me, they're paying attention to me, and all of these things send subtle cues that the person that you're dealing with is important, that you regard them as important, and when two people exchange those signals, they can build a high quality connection in less than a minute. Often what I'll say to my students, and in fact, I taught some students this today, we did it over Zoom in breakout rooms, and I said, what would you guys say if you then ran into this person later on? Would you feel that you would be more excited or less excited to see them? It's always unanimous. They would be more excited to see the person. Now, you could fairly admit that they were saying this while everybody else was on the phone or on the Zoom call, but I think it's real, right? You make those connections, you know that you're feeling it, you have that mutual regard, and the next time you see that person, you have a connection with them that you didn't have before. And so the point here is these, outreach, curiosity, find that common ground, engage with the person. It doesn't take much. It just takes moments, but the intentionality of doing it and saying, I'm going to reach out to this person. And that's something that, especially in a long-term relationship, we can forget to do. And when we're stressed out and we're thinking about other things, or we're anxious, or we're distracted, or the dog's running through our conference call on a really important time when we've been in a 2-bedroom apartment for 4 weeks and there's no end in sight, it can be hard to take a step back, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that the person that you're dealing with is somebody that is worth that investment and worth showing that recognition and regard. But the good news is, once you've taken that pause, it's really easy to do, and they will reciprocate. So I want to talk about a game that one might play, or an activity to help you and whoever else is in your house with the relationships you want to strengthen to do. So what I'm going to suggest is that when you're done with this webinar, you go to the Via Character Strengths website. This is www.viacharacter.org. The Via Character Strengths are a grouping of 6 virtues and 24 character strengths that have been gathered by looking exhaustively at every culture, every major culture in the world for the past 2,500 years, and gathering from them universal, ubiquitous strengths of character that are valued across all of these cultures. And when we gather these character strengths and when we think about them, these are things that are within all of us, but that we might use in different proportions and different degrees at different times. And so I'm going to suggest to you that the character strengths, this is a free survey that you can take. As you see from the slide, over 7 million people have taken this. There is a version that you can buy that will give you additional depth and exercises, but even if you just go do the free survey, this will give you information about your prioritization of character strengths and that of your partner, and it becomes a way that the two of you can communicate with each other in a new way that appreciates each other's best selves at a time when, maybe because of the sheltering in place, our best selves aren't always on display. So there are 24 character strengths that have been identified in the VIA survey. Love, courage, kindness, appreciation of beauty, judgment, honesty, spirituality. They're all here on the list. And if you look at them, it's kind of a wonderful thing, because there's not a single thing here that you would think, if somebody were to describe you with that adjective, where you would be insulted, right? So all of these things are character strengths. When you look at the results, the survey that you'll take, it's about 120 questions. It'll take you about 10 minutes. When you look at the results, you'll have a choice of saying for each of those questions, a 1 is, this question is not at all like me, and a 5 is, this question is very much like me. And what you see here are 2 people's results, and the farther to the right the bar goes, the more intrinsic a character strength that is. In other words, the more that person uses that character strength on a regular basis, kind of innately, to get through the day. So the top 5 or 6, VIA would tell you, are called characters, are signature strengths. These are things that you almost can't help but use. So gratitude or honesty, these are things on the person on the right, you kind of can't help but do those things. The bottom are called lesser strengths. And this is important, because if you are a type A person, you might say, well, spirituality is a weakness for the person on the right. And the answer is actually no. Spirituality is not a weakness. It's still a strength. For somebody to have a view of something larger than themselves, and an awareness of that, and a comfort level with that, that's still a strength. But for the person on the right, they're much more likely to use gratitude to handle challenging situations throughout their day than they are to use humility or spirituality. So it might not surprise you all, you guys don't maybe know me all that well, but to know that I am actually the person on the right. My wife is the person on the left, and each of us has a slightly different assortment of these character strengths. So my wife's signature strengths are gratitude, kindness, judgment, love, and perspective, all things that I recognize and admire about her. She uses them all the time. Similarly, mine is gratitude as well, my first one. But if you look, perseverance, honesty, love, humor, kindness, and judgment are all basically the same value within the survey. So these are all things that I use every day, and Jamie's got her things. But if you really think about it, each one of these lists is basically a gratitude list that you can use with each other throughout the day. So, for example, judgment, right? Jamie managed to get to the store at just the right moment and score a 36 box of toilet paper 2 weeks ago, right? That's a perfect opportunity for me to express gratitude and for me to express love and for me to express honesty about her judgment in figuring out how to do that and structuring that, going out and getting that, right? Each of these is a gratitude list because you can take the opportunity to recognize and appreciate the strengths of your partner and say, wow, when you did that, that was really using your strength of creativity. Now, I'm not saying that this can't get a little corny and a little overused the longer we're staying in captivity, but what I would say is the opportunity to understand the things that your partner intuitively uses to get through the day is an opportunity to appreciate them for their authentic selves and for their best selves. It's also an opportunity for you to choose specific strengths that you might want to work on or find new ways to deploy. When you're using your signature strengths, you're able to make it through the day with less psychological energy because it's easier for you to use those things to solve problems. I might also want to go down and say, well, wow, zest is something that I want to work on. I'd like to put more energy into things. What are little ways that I can work on to do that? Now, you might be saying, well, I wonder how many of these strengths correlate with happiness. And if you aren't saying that, I'm asking you that now. That's the power of the webinar. And it turns out that all of these strengths correlate to a life of fulfillment and subjective well-being. But in particular, these 5, curiosity, gratitude, hope, love, and zest, have shown a correlation with happiness. So if you're feeling sad or anxious and you'd like to work on happiness, these are character strengths that when you deploy them, people have found that over time, they tend to correlate with increases in happiness. Now, it's really important that you understand that I'm not advocating for you to pay for anything at the VIA website, but either on the VIA website or through Amazon, where you could order books or your independent bookseller, you can get direction from the VIA Institute about daily exercises that you can use for any of the character strengths that will promote them in your life and help you engage more fully with them. So I've talked a little bit about this, but the signature strengths are those that you really kind of can't get through the day without. You quickly use them more when you practice. You almost can't imagine not using them. And the creation of projects that revolve around these strengths are likely to give you a boost through your day. They're also things that you're likely to particularly appreciate when other people notice about you, because they're likely to be things that you kind of pride yourself on. When Jamie says, I'm funny, I love that. Right? Because humor is one of my signature strengths. It may not ever happen again now that we've done this webinar, but so far so good, and it's a great way for her to recognize me even if she doesn't really believe it. So the activity that I would suggest you guys do with your partners, children, family, take the survey, identify a signature strength, share a moment with your partner where you feel you used that strength, and then the partner should say, that was a great moment. Recognize and acknowledge and appreciate that moment, and then reciprocate it. Have your partner say, actually, there's another strength that I saw you used. You used your strength of prudence in this instance. You used your bravery in this instance. Whatever it might be. And those moments of recognition and regard will carry you through the day and help you get through some of the tougher times. Sharing in these good moments really matters, right? And in fact, what science has shown us is that the way our partners respond to good news actually matters more than the way they respond with bad news. Sharing in joy multiplies the joy. I'm joyful, so I share it with you, and then you respond with that joy, and now not only am I joyful, but I've brought you joy, and that actually multiplies the joy. I figure at some point that exponential train will hit some sort of ceiling, so we'll just stop with the back and forth at that level. But the way we communicate with each other in acknowledging and identifying good moments and little successes is really important. And so this is what MAPP instructor Karen Rivich calls active constructive responding. So there's different ways that we can respond when somebody gives us good news. We can be attuned and relive it, which is the joy multiplier. All of the others are bad. We can sort of say, well, aren't you worried about this good thing leading to some other thing, right? Aren't you worried we won't be able to find toilet paper again? Great, you found the toilet paper, but what are we going to do if we run out of Kleenex, right? That's a joy thief, right? You can say, oh, that's nice, I've got this thing I've got to do right now, which is the passive constructive. That's a disengagement. That saps energy from the relationship. Or you can just completely change the subject, right? Oh, you brought toilet paper home. What's for dinner? I did this other thing once that was really cool, right? Those things are conversation stoppers. All those other three things take energy out of the room. Only the active constructive, Jamie, you found the toilet paper. That's amazing. Tell me what it was like when you were in the CVS and it was the only thing left on that shelf. Did you have to push past somebody to get it? Did you feel incredibly victorious? That was spectacular. I'm so excited. That must have been amazing, right? That's what brings the energy into the room. Now, if we're fortunate, I'm going to show you an example of what you don't want to be striving for.
Had a good day?
I spend the morning trying to get the waste disposal man to come, have lunch with Marjorie Brooks, who takes up the entire meal complaining about her husband. Then I have to play 3 rubbers with Philippa Hunter. And I come back here and Sandersons have sent the wrong flowers.
Oh, no. Would you like some tea?
Yes.
I won the case.
This is the first moment I've had to myself all day.
Hello, Portia. How was the show?
Awful, Daddy. I've got to have a new horse.
No, I thought you liked Phantom.
He's not fit for dog meat. Can I change him, please, Dad? It's absolutely fine and it won't cost much.
Well, ought we to ask Belinda if she
Putting
can...
the tea on.
Yes, I am, darling, sorry.
Suppose I'd better
No,
get-
let me do it, please.
No, I'll do it.
I won the case.
Oh, now this is cracked.
So if you're not familiar with this movie, you really should be. It's A Fish Called Wanda. It's from the late 80s. John Cleese, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline, a wonderful cast. It's a great, hilarious kind of caper movie. But obviously, John Cleese is playing a lawyer in England, a barrister. He's won a big case. He comes home. He wants to share that. He wants to share that victory. And what he's getting is a joy thief, right? He's getting somebody who's not paying attention, totally disengaged, thinking about whatever else is going on. And it has the opposite effect. It could be a joy multiplier. Instead, it's a joy submerger, and that's not what we're looking for. What we want to do, especially in these times when things are difficult, is we want to take the extra second and really engage with the people we're with, really think about the things that they're saying and experience them together. Science has shown that social networks are more than twice as correlative to long life as cigarette smoking is to lung cancer. So the connection between building those social ties with the people around us and others really, really, really impacts our long term. And it's because of things like this. So we want to do that active, constructive responding. Now, that's all well and good, but there are still going to be moments where we're going to be in conflict. And so I want to suggest a strategy for you to think about in those moments when you do have disagreements with your family, with your relationships while you're sheltering in place. And what I want to talk about is emotional reappraisal. So we're talking about a study that was done by one of my favorite positive psychologists, a guy who works at Stanford named Greg Walton. And Walton and his colleagues looked at about 70 couples in the Chicago area over 2 years. And what he did was they tracked them all for just a year without anything happening. Then they split them into 2 groups. And they talked about one group, they gave this emotional reappraisal strategy, and the other group just continued in the control group. The idea was that when the couples had a disagreement, they were asked to write a quick 7-minute essay in which they put themselves in the position of a neutral third party who wanted the best outcome for the relationship. And they were asked to put that perspective on and then write down what they would do to resolve the dispute if they were not taking a side, but instead loved both people and just wanted what was best for the relationship. And the couples who did that reported a markedly more positive outcome in their relationships. They said the decline in their marriage quality stopped, while the control group continued to see decline in their disagreements. And they said, after a conflict, the negative emotions dissolved more rapidly. That ability to take yourself out of the kind of scorekeeping, who's winning, who's losing this argument, and instead put yourself in the neutral third party and say, I love both of you, what's best for the relationship, actually helped them not only mend fences more quickly, but it helped the negative feelings that came from the dispute go away more quickly. So we wouldn't want to pretend that it's all going to be sunshine and roses just because we're using the VIA character strengths, but we can take another pause, step outside of ourselves, kind of take our egos out of it, be a little bit more neutral and say, how can we improve this relationship if that's really what we're focused on and not the winning or losing? When all else fails, there's one strategy that I would share with you.
Now apologize!
What, me to you?
Apologize.
All right, I apologize.
You're really sorry.
I'm really, really sorry. I apologize unreservedly.
You take it back.
I do. I offer a complete and utter retraction. The imputation was totally without basis in fact and was in no way fair comment and was motivated purely by malice. And I deeply regret any distress that my comments may have caused you or your family. And I hereby undertake not to repeat any such slander at any time in the future.
Okay.
So if nothing else, I hope I've convinced you that you should absolutely watch or rewatch A Fish Called Wanda. It is really, really hard to stay angry at somebody who is giving a clear, sincere, heartfelt apology. I got to tell you, I know. I'm a pretty world-class apologist. John Cleese, what he just did there, I tip my hat, I admire it. There are times when a sincere apology is just the thing to do. Sometimes it's because you truly feel sorry, and sometimes it's because it's what's necessary to get you through to the next conversation. But when all else fails, apologize. That takes us to the end of this presentation. The question and answer or chat rooms are open, and I'd be happy to field questions and respond to them for however you'd like to do it. The researcher of this, so there's a question in that says, what was the researcher of the study you shared about the 7-minute essay? So the researcher's name is Greg Walton. And the name of the study is A Brief Intervention to Promote Conflict Reappraisal Preserves Using Marital Quality Over Time. It's from Psychological Science in 2013. And if you go back and look at the recording, the site is on the bottom, the site to the study is on the bottom of the slide. Other questions? Okay, well, I have to, oh, sorry. How do the VIA strengths compare to Gallup? So Gallup is, I have a lot of colleagues who think that the Gallup strengths are also terrific. What I would say is I think that the Gallup strengths are more engineered towards business engagement, whereas the VIA strengths are about strengths of character and authentic self. But both of them are excellent scales that have been scientifically and rigorously tested. They have internal consistency, and so unlike the Myers-Briggs, which you might take on a Monday and get one set of results and on a Thursday and get another, the research shows that for both Gallup and VIA, you're much more likely to be consistent over time with what your signature strengths are or what on Gallup your engagement strengths are. But Gallup is really designed for business and corporate engagement, whereas VIA is about sort of your authentic self and how you develop those things. Do I speak Russian? No. Clearly somebody who is familiar with the film, and I do. I am a fan of Russian, but yes, no, I do not. Okay, thanks everybody, and have a wonderful night. Good luck sheltering in place, and hopefully this will be helpful to you and to all of us as we manage through these difficult times. Thanks.